Hello everyone, so I'm here today to do my October wrap-up, and as always I will do first a bit of stats about the things I've read and then go through the books that I have read. So the first thing, I have read 6 books, 2,361 pages. This is kind of funny to me because last month I read about the same amount of pages and I read 14 books I think because it was shortly September. So it's just funny to me to see so clearly how inconsequential the number of books read is. But yeah, I have read 2,361 pages, which I'm happy enough with. It's lower than at the beginning of the year, but my life has gotten more busy, so it's what it is and I'm happy with it. In terms of mood, reflective and emotional are my biggest chunks, which is expected for me. Adventures is also a pretty big one, which is normally not the case, but yeah, it happens. And then mysterious, informative, and dark. Mysterious is also often not the case, but I think it is partly to blame for the Read Around the World projects that I'm doing. I'm reading a little bit more out of my comfort zone just because yeah, those books are not always like my exact what I'm looking for, but sometimes I'm surprised, like positively surprised, so I'm happy with that. In terms of pace, 33% of them were medium pace and 67 slow, which it's fairly normal to me. In terms of page number, I have read 33% were below 300 pages, and then 50% were between 300 and 499, and then 17%, so one book, was over 500 pages. So as I said, this is normally more towards the 300-ish page books, but this month I have read some bigger books, so yeah, that explains a lot of things. In terms of fiction and non-fiction, I have read 33% non-fiction and 67% fiction, which is also interesting because normally I read about 25% non-fiction, but I feel like this year I have often been lower than that number, and it's nice to see that this month it's higher, and probably next month will also be a lot higher because it's non-fiction November. In terms of genre, historical is the one I've read the most, and then nature, travel, mystery, memoir, and crime, which is interesting because normally I don't read crime, but again, read Around the World projects. And also, I think from all the times that I have done this before, I have not gotten literary in this section, so that's interesting. And then format is 50-50 print digital, so that's good. Trying to read more physical books, and that's working out well this year. And then finally, the number of pages has been up and down quite a bit this month. I started steady in the beginning of the month, not too bad, like between 50 and 100 pages is my average, I will say, at the moment. And then in the middle of the month, I picked up a little bit. I had a couple of chill weekends, so that gave me a little bit more space to read. And then it completely went down because I went to visit my parents in Barcelona, and then it went up again because there were some things that I wanted to finish, so I kind of rushed a little bit at the end of the month, but that's okay. I think overall is fine. I think that's at the moment something between 50 and 100 pages every day is good pace for me. So I was there most days, so I'm happy with that. Okay, so now that we have gone through the stats, let's go through the actual books I've read. So the first book I finished was The Circle of Karma by Kunzang. This one is for Read Around the World project for Tibet, and it's about this woman, Somo, that at the beginning of the book she is predicted to be having a pretty hard life. And one of her main things that she wants to be is that she wants to become a nun, but she knows that she's not going to be able to do that because she's not literate enough. So she tries to live her life in other ways, and she also, at some point, she gets pregnant and loses the baby, and that also gives her a way to leave the town because she cannot live within the the rules of the town, even though she loves her family, and so we follow her and her life. It's pretty miserable, and it's all explained kind of like within the mythology, or like the idea of karma, in a much deeper way than you would, if like the Western way that we use karma is like very immediate, like someone does something bad and therefore something bad happens to them, and this is a lot more nuanced and a lot more, I will say, interesting, basically. So yeah, I quite enjoyed that one. The next one is Buddha's Orphan by Samrat Upadhyay. And this one is for Nepal, for the Reader on the Wall project, and this one is about a couple. We follow a couple. Since they are teenagers, they know each other, and there are some tensions within their families. Like one of them has more money and position than the other, but he is an orphan, but he was adopted by a good off family, like not super well off, but decently. And then her mom, she has a lot of issues. She has an addiction, and so it's a whole different thing. But she does have status and money, so it's like a bit of a dichotomy. And then they get together and they decide to like get away from both of their families because they both have issues with their families. But then some very difficult things happen in their lives, and that also changes the relationship, and so they separate and come back, and we follow them throughout their life and see all of these hardships. And again, I like the fact that it's not only about these two people falling in love and getting together. It's like a marriage is really long and there are a lot of bumps in the way, and sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't work out as well, and this is about uh, all of those bumps, and I think I appreciated that. Then the next book I finished was Turning by Jessica Lee. And I have read Two Trees Make a Forest, I think it's called, by Jessica Lee, which was about her Taiwanese heritage, basically, and also the nature of Taiwan when she goes to visit. Is kind of both things. And to me, she can write a sentence level, but it was very messy in the organization. And I think it's a similar story with this. So this one is about her. She was in a difficult position and she moved to Berlin, and she decided that as a part of the healing process for her, she was going to do something that scared her, which was swimming in different lakes. So each chapter, I think, it's kind of a different lake that she swam in, and it's organized by seasons. And I think this one had a bit more structure than the other, and I enjoyed this one more than the other, and I see why this one is kind of her more preferred one. Um, but I still felt like sometimes she was talking about a thing and then another thought will come into her mind. Like, for example, she was talking about the nature of the lake, and then some intrusive thought about what is she going to do with her life comes in, and she writes that too, and it's kind of a bit muddled. But again, it was enjoyable enough, I would say, and especially if you are from Berlin or like know the Berlin area quite well, because she, like, these lakes are on the outskirts, like between Berlin and Potsdam and areas like that. It is interesting, especially if you know the places. I have a friend that lives in Potsdam, so I have been in that area quite a few times, and we have gone swimming in some of the lakes she mentioned. So that was nice for me. But yeah, it's good. It's good. It's not bad, but it's not like mind blowing either. Then I read Wartime Macau by Geoffrey Gunn, which again, Read Around the World project for Macau. And this is kind of a collection of essays about the history of Macau, especially during the Second World War, around that time. and I did learn a lot. I mean, I don't know much about Macau, but I did learn a lot, not only of the relationship of Macau with Lisbon, with the UK, and with China, but also with other colonies. Like Timor-Leste was also a Portuguese colony in Asia, so apparently they had quite a few connections between the two, which I didn't even think about. I did learn quite some few things. Um, However, because it's a collection of essays, it lacks a little bit of cohesion on the structure. Each chapter is structured differently, and some of them repeat things a little bit because, yeah, they are from different people. So yeah, in that sense, it's not the most cohesive book ever, but I think it still is interesting to know some more about Macau, and for sure there will be other books about Macau out there that maybe are better than this one, but this one is the one I read. And then I read The Borrowed by Ho-Kei, which is again Reader on the World project for Hong Kong. And this one is a crime police kind of novel, and it's structured in 6 different parts, and we follow the same people, most of them, like the same detective, I would say, uh, and but they are like a few years from each other. So it starts from the most recent one. It's, I think, 2010s, and then the last part of it is from 1967, I think. And so then the ones in between are like in descending order every 5-10 years or so. And we follow, as I said, mainly one of the detectives, and also from the first, and also like a famous criminal that he's often trying to catch. And I found some of the parts were a lot more interesting than others. Like they could stand it on their own, and some parts were not the best, and I just tuned out. And then I went to the next part, and I was hooked, and I wanted to know what happened. And it has a little bit of a one of those like Sherlock Holmes moments sometimes. That is like, oh, the detective sees what's happened, and it's like, oh, clearly this and this and this and this and this happened because of this and this and this, and connects all the dots and all of that. And sometimes that was a bit obvious that he was going like what was going to happen, because yeah, it's otherwise it would have been too simple for this kind of story. But sometimes was interesting still to know what was going on with it. So I moderately enjoyed it. I also don't understand why it had to be in that inverse chronological order. I would have preferred it to be just in chronological order, but I'm sure there is a reason that I didn't catch. Overall, it was quite fun. It was a little bit too long, probably, but it was fun. And then the final book that I read this month was another big one, and that's Wolf Totem by Jiang Rong. And this is semi-autobiographical, autofiction kind of thing. So this is about a Chinese student that I think around the Chinese Revolution flees to Mongolia and starts living with the Mongolian nomadic people in the grasslands. And these people have a very big fascination with wolves. So this student is integrated, and at some point, because of cultural reasons, he decides he wants to take a cub from a wolf and raise it himself. And yeah, there's a lot of information about wolves. At some point, it almost felt like, if you have ever read Moby Dick, how sometimes it's a bit too much about whales. Well, this was a little bit too much about wolves. And also the importance of wolves within the Mongolian culture, it was really, really strong as well. The writing was good, and I think that there were valuable elements of it, but I think that I liked, especially kind of towards the end, there is a discussion about the Cultural Revolution. There's discussions about how people migrating to Mongolia changes the culture and how colonization changes cultures and stuff like that, which I really appreciated, but they were small parts of this book. It was not like the main points were wolves, which I would have known by the title, but I thought it was kind of maybe metaphorical or something, but no, it's really about wolves. So yeah, it was a little bit boring at some points, and it was also not super subtle. So yeah, I can see how people think this is very accomplished and literary, but the reading experience was not my cup of tea. So that's what I would say about this one. So yeah, those are all the books that I read this month. Let me know if you have read any of them, if you want to read any of them, or if you read anything very good this month. Please comment down below, and until next video, bye!